All right, everyone, welcome back to another Star Wars Galaxy of Heroes video with Fat Phil, and today we're going to be talking about the kit reveal for the Gungan Boomer, and I'm going to be making some comparisons with this faction to the Bad Batch, as I think that their release, the cadence of them very similarly ties up to what the Bad Batch is, and I'm very curious how they're going to perform in the game pre-Jar Jar, as I think they'll be kind of on that Bad Batch level. That's just my thought, and then we'll obviously get Jar Jar that will lift them to another area. But I also have some very interesting thoughts about the Omicron choices for this faction and why I think the recent poll where they talked about the Conquest Omicrons is playing a factor into this faction. So like and subscribe, comment down below, let me know your thoughts. Again, channel members, please revert back to the Andrew Bradshaw meme of my priorities. It was one of the funniest things I've ever seen. I probably got to pull it up here again because it was just absolutely hilarious. I thought it was one of the funniest things I'd ever seen in my life. It was a great meme. Always worth sharing this. Hold on. Let me pull this puppy up. All right. Here we are. Screen capture. Beautiful. Let's go here. And there we go. All right. Yep. There it is. That is exactly the meme that's going on in my life right now. So thank you guys again. Let's kind of break down here. And I first want to just spend some time talking about this Gungan faction a little bit. So we already have two Gungans in the game. We got Boss Nass and Captain Tarpals. And when you go back to the Bad Batch, if you remember, it started with Hunter, then we got Tech. And so we kind of got part of their kits, but we're like, where's the defense up supposed to be coming from, right? Like it was like Hunter, Tech, Echo, and then Wrecker. And I find that very interesting in that order of release, because if you think about the way we use these characters in 3v3, the most common setup you see is Hunter, Tech, and Echo, right? So when in 3v3, we normally kick Wrecker out to another team, and that kind of makes you wonder with these Gungans, if the 3v3 team that they have in mind is Boss Nass, Captain Tarpals, and potentially the Gungan Boomadier before we, take into consideration where Jar Jar kind of fits in. So very curious to kind of see that, right? Just kind of, again, speculating a little bit here, but let's flip over to the forums and let's start talking about the meme. Let's start talking about this kit reveal for Gungan Boomadier. I am, of course, going to move my fat face up to the right-hand corner here. So, Gungan Boomadier, again, this artwork is so awesome. They always crush it. It's not as good, if we scroll down here, not as good as Meathead's artwork. This is just an absolute masterpiece. I think it belongs in the Louvre. But, again, Meathead, I want to give you credit, man. I mention this all the time. Like, this is some of the funniest stuff. I think it's great. I love it. Like, I think this is a great... Like, people think this is... Like, it's so silly that it's awesome, right? I love it, man. But let's kind of talk about this character. So, again, it's an attacker and a Gungan. So, the key attribute's going to add plasma shielding to the shield generator. Damage is amplified when attacking enemies who have been debuffed by Captain Tarpals and Boss Nass. I find it very interesting that those two get called out here. That doesn't mean that Jar Jar won't get called out. I just find that very interesting that those are the two characters called out. Horn of Unta Gunga gives Gungan Boomadier Frenzy and another Gungan ally bonus turn, which is, yeah, that is bananas. Like, that's, you think that Gungan ally gains a bonus turn, they use a special ability, boom, Gungan Boomadier takes another turn. While shield generator is up, any ability that any special that the Boomadier uses will provide him with stacking defense, penetration, and offense. That's, love to see that. So the inspiration, we took a concept from the Gungan Militia Gung and broke it out into both the shield-bearing phalanx and the unit we're talking about today, the Boomadier. So I think we know now that the next Gungan we'll get will be the shield-bearing phalanx, which will be really cool. That's a great one to get. We wanted to include the iconic Horda Unta, right, in the squad and felt that it was home here in the Boomadier. I love that. That's awesome. So, best used with all Gungans. That's very interesting to note. For some reason, I find this very, very interesting where they're like, yeah, you're going to want to use this character with all Gungans. Like, that should be self-explanatory. But I think that kind of leads us down this road that potentially Jar Jar could be used in another team, maybe with characters like Padawan Obi-Wan Kenobi and Qui-Gon Jinn and Master Qui-Gon in a 3v3 situation, with Padme Amidala kind of using some other character, or Queen Amidala using some other characters. Again, I don't know that for certain, but it makes you wonder, right? Just kind of puts that little bit in your head like, man, that could potentially work out that way. Because think about how we use Jedi Master Kenobi. You're often using Commander Tano, General Kenobi, and then your Padme and Ahsoka Tano, you're not sure where to use them. Oh, maybe I'll use them with, Queen Amidala. Again, I don't know. I'm just hypothesizing, guys, right? Speed and crit chance are solid mods to look at. Of course, we need speed. Like, why wouldn't you? Where Boomadier goes in turn order will benefit your damage output. So that's very interesting to mention that. We'll definitely have to see how that plays a role with turn order, because if he's modded for speed, he's probably going to be faster than some of these other characters. So his marquee will begin Thursday at 11 a.m. Pacific time. That will be tomorrow at the time of recording. The marquee event will have daily rewards. Where is his Omicron? As it's a raid Omicron, his Omicron is arriving with the new Battle of Naboo raid. I just want to say something. Hold on. We're going to flip back over to the game because I have a theory here. I actually think that the Boomadier was going to have a Conquest Omicron, right? Let's think about this. Boss Nass has a Territory War Omicron, and Captain Tarples is Territory Battles. So that leaves us with the three other game modes that you can apply Omicrons into. You can apply them in raids, which they said that's where this guy's going, Grand Arena, and Conquest. You remember where they said, hey, how do you feel about Conquest Omicrons? They had that whole survey where they're like, how do you feel about Conquest Omicrons? I think that the feedback from that was primarily, we don't want them. And so I think this guy was actually, if we go back here, I think that he was actually going to get a Conquest Omicron, and they scrapped that idea entirely, going with the raid Omicron, because if you remember with Scout Trooper, they're like, hey, his Omicron will be released later in the raid. I could be wrong. This could be tinfoil hat time, and I'm just completely off the mark, but I think that he was going to have a Conquest Omicron, and they've scrapped that idea, and they're like, hey, we're going to move this Omicron into the raid, and we're going to give whatever game mode this character was going to get an Omicron, maybe GAC or something, to the next Gungan, probably the Phalanx guy, and then Jar Jar probably going to be either Grand Arena or Territory Wars. We don't know yet, right? We're not sure where that's going to end up, but he's going to be in one of those two game modes you can imagine. He's not going to have a Territory Battle or Raid Omicron, in my personal opinion. Or, the other interesting thing that I would love to see them do, because they've not done this yet, what if Jar Jar has 3 Omicrons, but they're an Omicron for Grand Arena, Territory Wars, and Territory Battles? I'd be very curious if they would finally release a character that has an Omicron for all of those different game modes. That, I think, would be, I don't know, I think that could be a lot more interesting to see, would he get Omicrons for different game modes? Because this is the first faction since Inquisitors that the entire faction is built off of a brand new unit since Omicrons have been released, right? Think about that. When you go back through all the characters that we've gotten that have been released, from Omicrons, right? This is the first one that's been released this way since Inquisitors. And if you remember, the Inquisitors all have Territory War lead Omicrons that are probably some of the least equipped Omicrons in the game, because then Grand Inquisitor also got Territory War Omicrons. So their Omicrons are some of the most pointless Omicrons in the game. I think Capital Games learned from that, and they're like, hey, we need to split this up. And when you think of all the new characters that have come in, they're getting Omicrons for different avenues of the game to make that character good and or bad, right? You think of Jabba the Hutt, right? There's a raid Omicron on Coors Light Leia, Territory Wars for Skiffguard Lando, and GAC for Kersantin. Leia, you think Drogon has that Territory War, or GAC, sorry, Omicron. And I think that was the only one there because she didn't get any other new characters for that Rebel side. Think of Rogue One, Jyn Erso got added for Territory Wars, Admiratus got Grand Arena, and Cassian got TB. But they weren't all new, right? They were able to kind of fix that around. This is the first faction where it's all new characters. And so I think they were thinking, hey, what if we gave them 5 Omicrons for 5 of the game modes and then recognized that nobody wanted Conquest? Again, I know it's tinfoil hat time. We haven't even got into the kit reveal. But I think this video is, I wanted to make this video more than just a kit reveal and also kind of talking about this faction and where I think they fit in to Galaxy of Heroes, right? So, the big thing that they did change up, The amount of Omicrons for the first time reward in tier 7 has been up from 2 to 4 to account to needing all the Gungans at relic 5. This is basically saying, hey, we want you to spend even more money, right? That's all they're trying to do. They're going to try and see, does this change the amount of people who will take this character to relic 5? I absolutely think they will. And the time the daily reset happens for the marquee is now 11 a.m. Pacific time. I'm not sure what it was before, but, you know, that's fine. I think that has to account for daylight savings. That's just my assumption. So now we're finally going to get into the kit reveal here. So catch this is the basic. Deal physical damage to target enemy. This is tripled if the enemy is shocked. That's actually absurd. Gain speed up for 1 turn. Speed up is a great ability. Cluster Boomer, cooldown of 3. Deal physical damage to target enemy. Deal an additional instance of damage for each offense down, defense down, healing immunity, and speed down present on target enemy. Always deal 5 instances of damage to separatist enemies. Remove 1 stack of recharge from the ally shield generator per instance of damage. So this is a lot of debuffs that you're going to deal additional damage for with a max of 5, but then with separatists, doesn't matter, right? You're just always going to deal 5. So, Horn of Untagunga, cooldown tier 5. Or cooldown of 5, and this is, it says, I'm not sure what tier 3 versus tier 5. I'm not sure what that actually means. Deal physical damage to all enemies and inflict ability block for 1 turn. Separatist enemies are inflicted with protection disruption for 2 turns, which can't be copied, dispelled, or resisted. Remove 3 stacks of recharge from allied shield generator. Gain 2 stacks of plasma shielding. Swap turn meter with target other Gungan ally, and Boomadier gives frenzy for 1 turn. Target other Gungan ally gains accuracy up for 2 turns. So, how I view you using this ability, it's a turn meter swap and you're gaining frenzy. So what I personally would do is you're going to want to swap turn meter with a Gungan who has the Gungan with the least amount of turn meter. Swap it with them and use a special ability. And now you took a Gungan who wasn't going to take a turn for a while, gave them an immediate turn, used a special ability, gave this guy another turn right away. Because if you swap it with a Gungan ally who has a lot of turn meter and they use a special, that frenzy is going to activate anyway, and you kind of like wasted turn meter, if you will. Think about it. If you have like, you know, your Gungan allies, and say you're using this guy in a 3v3 scenario, Boss Nass has 90% turn meter, Captain Tarples has 20% turn meter. If you go to Boss Nass, he uses a special ability, right? You now went from 90% turn meter, right? You swapped it. He's now got 100%. Boomadier has 90%. Boss Nass uses a special. You went from 90% up to 100. So your Captain Tarples is still at 20% turn meter. But if you swap that with Captain Tarples at 20%, he uses a special ability, right? Your Boomadier goes from that 20% turn meter up to 100, and your Boss Nass is still at 90% turn meter, getting another turn soon. So that's kind of why I like this idea of you're going to want to swap it with less turn meter, which is a big change, because oftentimes when you're swapping this, you want to trade it with somebody who's got a lot of turn meter and take back-to-back turns. But because he's gaining frenzy, I think you're going to want to swap it with somebody with a lot less turn meter and use a special. I know that's a very complex analysis, but hopefully when Arnold does his testing, because he'll have these things long before me, he kind of showcases that. So, at the start of battle, Gungan Boomadier loses 75% max health, gains that much max protection. Gungan Boomadier has 30% defense penetration and offense. While allied shield generator is active, enemies defeated by Gungan attackers can't be revived. So Gungan attackers is very important to note there, because that means that anybody who is a non-attacker, which I think Jar Jar might not be an attacker, can't be revived, because Tarples and this character, right, and Boomadier are both attackers. So I would imagine that Jar Jar is probably not going to be an attacker. Just me taking a guess here. Whenever Gungan Boomadier uses a special, gain 5% defense and offense for the rest of battle. And that's, again, this is all while this is active. And then while a Gungan ally has retribution, they are immune to target lock. So also a very nice ability. So with all of this said, I think this faction is going to be very good. I'm just curious kind of how they match up to that Bad Batch type of team, right? What their status is. But again, I have that kind of sinking suspicion if I go back to the game for a second, I just have that sinking suspicion that this guy was going to have a Conquest Omicron, and they took it out because the feedback from the game was very negative on Conquest Omicrons, right? I was really thinking about that when I saw this. I was like, wow, that makes sense. But now I'm beginning to see more and more that this character is saying, hey, he's best with all Gungans. Well, if there's only one Gungan lead, you have to use this guy, which means, would you potentially run Boss Nass, Captain Tarples, and then Jar Jar kind of goes in another team for 3v3? Because this is kind of the problem that you have right now with, Gungans, is there's only going to be 5 of them. So 3v3, 2 get left out, which is very similar to your Bad Batch, where there's 5 of them right now. 2 of them get left out in 3v3. Hopefully Crosshair comes in and finally ends the madness, and you can use Crosshair as another 3v3 team. Because that's just kind of the way that my mind works, that like, how do you use this faction in 3v3? Oh, well, Jar Jar gets to go with Master Kenobi and Master Qui-Gon, because that would be lore accurate. And then, Queen Amidala kind of takes some of those other leftover Galactic Republic characters. Again, I don't know. I'm, just trying to give you guys what I'm seeing and give you some predictions. Hopefully these are right? Because I hope I'm right, because it would show that I'm able to read this game pretty well. But overall, guys, I'm very excited. I think this Gungan faction is going to be really good. And honestly, if they're kind of at that Bad Batch level before you get Jar Jar, that's going to be some of the best free-to-play news in a long time. Because that means that you'll be able to use this faction in the raid before you get Jar Jar. Because remember, Jar Jar's going to the Journey Guide, right? I don't even have a Journey in progress right now, which is crazy. I guess I got to go do that. It's really funny. So I guess that means I've got to choose, this is Jar Jar. I guess I got to go Bo-Katan, right? I'll do this. But that question that kind of comes to mind is, will Jar Jar get kind of released like Bo-Katan, where we're going to get a regular monthly event and then they kind of drop it off, or they continue it? Or will it be similar to Jedi Knight Cal Kestis, where they're going to say, ha, lol, you're going to wait months and months and months for this guy? So I'm very curious to see how all this pans out. Let me know your guys' thoughts down below. Again, like, subscribe, comment. I love you all. May the Force be with you, and I'll see you in the next video. Cheers, friends.